Hi, welcome to session number 11 in our Getting Focused for Running and Fitness videos. Today we're going to focus on our mobility and in particular today hip mobility. So Kim, why is hip mobility important?
So when we're running, actually all of our power comes from this area. So when I'm talking about hips today, I don't just mean these bits, I mean the front part of your hips, your pelvis, your glutes, this whole area here. And if we're running efficiently and well, then that's where all our sort of force and driving power comes from. A lot of people think running's all about having strong legs, when actually if you're going to be an efficient and strong runner that's going to be doing it for a long time, then you want your hips to be nice and healthy, probably even more so than your legs, because they're just kind of the wheels that keep everything turning. Even if you're not a runner, again, a lot of people have problems when they're hit with their hips as they get older, and a lot of that can be put down to a sedentary lifestyle, and that doesn't just mean people that do just sit around all the time. We do generally sit a lot more than we should or need to, even if we feel that we don't. So as we've said before, when you're sitting on the sofa at home, you're sitting to eat your food, you're sitting when you're driving, we do sit an awful lot. So when we're sitting, we're in that flexed position. So if you can show me what I mean, Jason. So when we're sitting down, we're constantly like that, or even more so, we're like at a right angle, aren't we, completely? Yeah. So if you were to do that,
sit without a chair.
If you were to do that without a chair, but like standing up, you'd basically just be bent at the hips, wouldn't you? You'd be like that.
Oh, yeah.
That's how if you walked around like that all the time, you're going to end up with problems, and it's easy to see why. So, oops, like that, see. Being in that position, we've got at the front here, we've got this is very general anatomy, there's lots more going on, but you've got hip flexors here, these muscles that run down the front of your hips. So they're attached up here somewhere, and they're attached to the tops of your leg, your quad muscles. And if you're in that position all the time, you're making those short, you're making them tight. So when you ask them to stand like this, they can feel sore and tight and stiff. On the flip side, you've got these muscles, the big glute muscles, that are actually really, really important to running and walking. So when you're in constant flexion, they're just stretched all the time. So a lot of people have real problems trying to feel their glutes turn on and engage. They feel like you really have to work hard to do it because they're so loose. So what we want ideally, when you're doing a running action, if you stand sideways on and just show us a sort of leg drive. So you want your hip to be pulling up at the top, and then when you're going down on the backwards drive, you want your glute to be engaging and your hip to be extending. Now, a lot of people, especially long distance runners, it's quite easy to kind of do a shuffle. We call it the ultra shuffle, don't we? Where you kind of constantly like that. So you're hunched over, your hip flexors shortened, your glutes are lengthened, so you're not getting any power. At best, you're just going to be quite inefficient in your running. At worst, you're going to end up with some kind of injury or niggle. So we're going to look at how to get all this doing what it's supposed to do today. And a lot of it is basic posture. So whenever you're standing up or walking around, you need to be aware of what your pelvis is doing. So your pelvis, again, is kind of your little bowl of bones that sits here. Our hip bones here shouldn't be... Can you show me a pelvic tilt with your bum back? So a lot of people stand like that. And it might be that you've got a little pot belly. Jason doesn't have a pot belly, but it kind of looks like he does when he's doing that. Oh, and that's just because of the way he's standing. His bum's sticking out, his belly's sticking out because he's standing with a tilt in his pelvis. So the actual correct way of having your pelvis in the right position is to just tilt it forward like you did there. So if you just do it again. So every time you're standing up, think about pulling your pelvis forward and up. Think about your hip bones pointing up rather than pointing forward, because then it'll give you that exaggerated movement. And when you do that, can you tell me what you feel in your tummy when you do that?
I feel this feels a bit tighter.
Yeah.
Like it's working.
Can you feel anything in your bum when you do that?
Yeah, I can feel I can engage my glutes a bit easier.
So that's how it should feel. You should feel when you pelvis, when your your pelvis tilts forward. When your pelvis tilts forwards, your tummy will engage, your glutes will start to turn on, and that's what you want. So every time you're standing anywhere, if you feel yourself sagging, just pull yourself up. Good posture isn't about doing this all the time. It comes from here as well. So that's the first tip. Second thing that we can do is we need to go onto the floor.
Okay.
Okay, now we can look at how we can sit in a healthier way. This doesn't necessarily mean when you're sitting on a chair, but you can sit in some chairs in this fashion, because we do regularly, don't we? We sit in our office chairs cross-legged, maybe on the sofa cross-legged as well. So what sitting cross-legged is doing is actually just rotating your hips out a little bit. So our hips don't just move our legs forwards and backwards, they've got quite a lot of rotation in them as well. And if you aren't regularly moving your hips in a rotational way, they're going to get, again, stiff and stuck in this one plane of movement. So sitting cross-legged is a really nice way of doing it. If that feels uncomfortable to sit cross-legged and you feel your back going, you feel yourself sagging, like you can't hold yourself up, you can do it with something behind you. You can sit on something just to lift your hips off the floor and give yourself a little bit more space here. But the more often you can do this, it might be that you start with your knees right up here and it feels really hard. The more often you can do it, the more you can start to lower them. I'm sitting in a different way, I don't really know what you would call this, but this is also helping with inward and outward rotation. So this hip is rotating outwards. You can see here my leg's kind of rolling out, and this hip's rotating inwards a little bit. You don't like that, do you? I find this quite comfortable. Jason doesn't. So
we're all different.
Yeah. So again, I would be saying to Jason, sit on a cushion or something, put a cushion under this bum cheek just to lift yourself up. But the more you can fidget around in different positions, the better. Sit like this in one way, that the other way. You're jealous of me, aren't you?
Oh, that's
you don't like it? Well, yeah, and
it's still not comfortable.
It's going to be easier on one side than the other.
But that's something to work on, isn't it?
Yeah,
that's something that.
And again, it's because I sit like this more often than Jason does, and I do a bit more yoga than you do.
I feel that all the way down there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you are sitting at some point, just get on the floor and sit like this instead. Get on the floor and sit cross-legged instead, and just work on getting your knees down. Just maybe put one foot in front of the other and you can get your knees a bit lower that way. But don't worry if you're up here at first, because if you are tight in your hips, that's normal. Another thing we can do is an exercise. So rather than just thinking about what you're doing in everyday life, a really good exercise to help turn your glutes on, which will help get some movement in your hips, is a clamshell. So Jason's going to demonstrate the best.
On the side.
Yeah. The best way of doing this so that you can feel it working is with everything against a wall. So if you were to do this against a wall, it would be the soles of your feet, your bum, your shoulders and your head would all be lined up with the wall. We're going to show you outside a wall at the moment. So what you want to do is you're looking to lift this leg up, but keep the inner edges of your feet really tight together. If you let your feet open, you're going to be able, can you just open your feet so you can go, sorry. Just like do that, and you can get further. You can get much further, and you can be like, yeah, I'm smashing these, but it's not working this bit, which it needs to be working. So keep the inner edges of your feet together, go as high as you can. When I first started doing this, I joke you not, I was there, and it was really hard. So you'll feel this in the sort of outside of your glute. If you put your hand there, you can feel it working as well. So you're trying to keep everything in straight line and just get this glute turning on. You're also there, again, getting some rotation in your hip rather than just a forwards and backwards movement.
Okay.
So I did these as a kind of rehab exercise for an IT band issue that I had. And I was doing them maybe 10 times, 3 times a day. That's how often I had to do them to make it right and to make it work. If you're just doing this to try and get some engagement and some movement, then do them first thing in the morning, just 10 on each side. Some stretches that you can do, which you do need to hold for quite a long time for them to have an impact. We're going to show you now, and we're going to show you some regressions as well. They can just feel really nice, even if you don't hold them for 3 or 4 minutes at a time. They just feel really nice at loosening you off after a run, or maybe first thing in the morning once you've got yourself a bit warmed up. So the first one is called a pigeon, but we're going to do a slightly easier version of it. So it's really hard to explain this one, isn't it? You want to bring one leg forward.
There.
No, sorry, bring it, so I'm
Like
going to,
that?
yeah, but start like that.
Oh,
So the easiest way of doing this without rotating your hip is to send, so Jason's got his right leg back and it's as flat to the floor as it can get with his hip stretching out here, and then he's just got his left leg bent up underneath him. So you're stretching out this hip flexor, and again you'll probably feel this in your bum as well. He's got his foot flat to the floor, so the top of his foot is flat on the floor. So he's really stretching out that whole front chain in his leg. He's using his hands to press away from the ground and just looking forward. So it's a bit of an arch in your back as well, but really the stretch is here. If you're going to do a full pigeon, you would then turn that leg in. So you're getting a lot of rotation in this hip. And when you see yogis do this, their bums are on the floor. I don't expect that there are many runners that can get their bum to the floor. I don't expect there are many runners that can get their leg really, really straight. So you're aiming, Jason's pretty good at this with his shin actually, you're aiming for your shin to be parallel to your arms. So you should be able to feel this rotation in your hip. You still feel the stretch in the other hip. And if you want to take it further and you're feeling that you can without anything pinging, you can go lower down onto the floor. So again, when you see yogis do it completely flat to the floor, that's a work in progress for most runners. Where do you feel that when you do it?
Down the outside of my glutes.
Yeah.
Down there.
So it's all about trying to get engagement here and stretching here.
Okay.
Okay. Next one is a lizard. So they're all funny names, these, aren't they? So a lizard is like a really low lunge. So if you start off with your hands in high plank again, that's it, but put your foot on the outside of this arm. So it's like you're stepping up in a mountain climber. And then you're going to lift this knee off the floor and straighten that out. So again, it's a really nice opening in both hips actually, just in a different way. You're stretching this hip flexor again, but on the other side, you're just really opening up through the other side of your hip. So through this area, your glute and your into your hamstring.
And how long would you hold these for?
To have the effect of fully lengthening a muscle, you need to hold stretches for 3 or 4 minutes or more, which not many people have time to do. If you're doing this after a run, try and hold it for about a minute if you can. Again, it seems quite a long time, but you're not really going to have much impact if you hold it for 15, 20 seconds. A regression of that is where you go into it again, where you put your back knee down. It just feels a little less pressured.
Like that, there.
No, go forward again.
Yeah, but I'm just showing my back knee.
Yeah. So arms on the inside, so you can almost push against this knee and you get a really good stretch in this leg. But you're still getting the same stretch in the other hip flexor. Just doesn't feel quite as intense. Okay. And the last one we're going to look at is called a couch stretch. So we need the chair for this. I'm going to keep it against the wall.
Yeah, I'll do that.
So this is a really intense one. Sometimes not the most comfortable for your feet or your knees. So this is why it's called a couch stretch, because you would do it on your couch so it's nice and soft in your living room. This is a bit harder. So the way to get into this is like Jason is doing. Start leaning forward and just put your foot up on the top of your sofa or couch if you're American. This is going to stretch your hip out nicely. Your quad as well gets a nice stretch. And then the aim being to first of all, get yourself upright so that you're in a nice straight line here. It might be that it's too intense and you just have to lean forward, lean your torso forward, maybe even keep your hands on the floor. If you feel you're able, you're going to start inching yourself back until your bum is pretty much touching your heel. So like the butt kicker running drill, you want your bum and your heel to make contact in an ideal world when things have started to loosen off and you've got used to it. But it's quite an intense one. So start off with a big gap if you're particularly tight in your hips and just work your way back as you go. This is one you can do in front of the telly on your sofa, and it's a bit more comfortable.
Start easy with that one, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so you can use a towel or something like that, or a cushion, if you haven't got a nice rectangular bit of foam.
It's one that you can do as well actually on your sofa, depending on what your sofa's like, with your foot on the back of the sofa, so it's really soft if you've got a nice squishy sofa. Just might be a bit wobbly. Okay, there are our, there you go. There are our hip stretches and exercises, so it's just really useful if you can implement those a few times a week post-run. All of those are really good to do. So if you're running pretty much every day, you can get those exercises, those stretches in every single day. The clamshells are great first thing on the morning because they're not as intense.
One of them.
Or one, yeah.
Yeah, you
Pick the one that
all of them.
Pick the one that you like.
Yeah, or that challenges you a little bit, maybe.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Thanks, Kim. That's some good. We'll put a list of what those stretches and exercises were on the notes for the video as well. So if you've got any questions or comments, please let us know, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.